So we are starting a new study on the life of Abraham. And this is lesson 1 on the life of Abraham. So, and what we're focusing on is what do we learn about Abraham and what do we learn about God in this relationship. So there's a lot of other things we can get into, but we want to try to maintain that focus of Abraham and God. And what we can learn from how Abraham responds. Jeannie, here you go. Welcome to class. So last week we sort of got started on the homework, and we were looking at Genesis 11, 24 to 32. And we want to kind of review what did we learn about Abraham's family. Oh my gosh. What did we learn about Abraham's family?
Feel better? I'm normal.
That's a setting on a clothes dryer, honey.
Who was his father? Let's start there. Terah. Okay. Did he have any brothers and sisters? Did Abraham have any brothers and sisters? Okay. I see this 2, Heather. 2.
2 that are named.
2 that are named.
No, sorry, I'm just taking.
Aaron and Nahor.
And
Nahor
Haran.
and Haran, right. And what do we know about,
One of them died.
okay, which one died? Haran died, and
One
where?
on the far right.
The one on the far right, Haran, died, and where did he die?
In Haran. Isn't that right? No.
On the road.
You're right, that's not right.
Haran, no, Haran died in the presence of Terah.
Of his father, yeah.
In Ur.
In Ur, okay, in Ur. And so Haran died in Ur, in the presence of his father. Where does Lot fit into this picture?
Aaron's son.
Okay, he's Haran's son. So his father, Lot's father Haran, died while they were still in Ur.
So Lot was an orphan early on.
Lot was what?
An orphan early on.
An orphan early on, right? Okay.
We know his dad died, we don't know about his mom though.
But not so early. He didn't have 2 daughters.
Well, okay. So, so Lot. What did you say, Betty? I just lost it. Oh, now you got your mouth full.
But so
We don't know about his mother.
Yeah, his mother might have still
Okay.
been alive, but
But why do we assume that his mother's not there?
But the Bible
Tells us so.
reference to many women.
Okay, well, let's follow. What do we know in this little? Let's follow. What do we know? What's this?
There's not a place for her on that grid.
Okay, there's not a place for him on the grid. Okay,
So, she's not-
let's look at what happened.
Kinsman redeemer.
What happened?
Yes, there you go.
Jesus, God.
We are not going there. Okay.
Control it.
Remember I said we want to focus on Abraham? Remember that? Yes. Okay. This is getting crazy early on, and it's not going to work. Okay? So let me just be a little bit more specific. When I ask about what happened with Lot?
He traveled with
Okay, he traveled with Abraham.
and his
Okay?
grandfather.
What happened here?
He did have possessions, so he had an inheritance.
Okay, so let's go back to the scripture. Okay, and it says, Abraham, in verse 31 of Genesis 11, what does it say?
Terah took Abram his son and Lot the son of Haran his grandson and Sarai his daughter-in-law, and they went from Ur of the Chaldeans into the land of Canaan,
He went with
and they settled there.
Okay, where did they settle?
Well, first we stopped at
To
Haran.
Haran.
Okay,
Aaron,
right.
yeah.
So
further
they
up.
were on their way to Canaan, but they settled in Haran for a while. Okay, so again, who went with Terah?
Lot.
Lot, okay. So it's like Lot became, Abraham or Terah decided to care for Lot, right? And took him with them. So there's a clue that maybe his mother was not around.
Well, or it could be that, you know, the father was, or the male was always, but maybe the more important in the family, and so they took on the father role, and, you know, so he could have still had a mother, but she just wasn't as important.
Yeah. So there's a lot of could have been, and we don't know. But what we do know is that Lot, after his father died, Lot went with Abraham to Haran. When he left Ur.
And it doesn't say that other brother went.
Right, right.
That's
Because, okay, look at chapter 12. What do we learn in chapter 12? What are the first 3 verses? What does it say?
Go forth from your country, from your relatives.
Okay, so God is speaking to who?
Abram.
Okay, to Abram, and he says to go forth from your country, which would be Ur in of Chaldea, right? And to go forth, and what does he promise him?
Make a great nation.
Bless you.
Blessings.
Or I will show you the land first.
Okay, the land, I will show you. So when he's going, does he know where he's going?
No.
Specifically, no. But he says, I will show you the land. And what else?
I'll make you a great nation.
Yeah.
Make
you a
your name great.
Make you a great nation.
Make you a great nation.
And you'll bless those that bless Abram and curse those who don't.
He will be a blessing in his life.
And curse those who
Dishonor, I
curse
guess.
you. And I heard somebody say it will make you a blessing.
A blessing.
It will make you a blessing. Okay, so these are, remember I said to always watch when it says I will. When God says I will, because then he will. So he says, I will show you the land. I will make your name great. I will make you a great nation. I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you, and I will make you a blessing. Okay. What did we see about this in the cross references in Acts 7, 1 through 5, and Hebrews 11, 8?
I had a question first.
Yeah?
Did God tell Terah, did I miss something? Did God tell Terah to go from Ur to Haran? We didn't miss something then.
We didn't miss something because
Okay.
we don't know what God said to Terah, right?
We don't know how they landed in Haran. in the
Okay,
first
so look
place.
at Acts 7. Look at Acts 7, your references to Acts 7. Because this gives us a little bit more information about that call.
Well, God told Abraham,
Okay?
and he promised his ancestors land. I mean, his descendants land.
So in Acts 7, it says he appeared to Abraham when he was where?
In Mesopotamia.
Still in Mesopotamia,
Which is Ur.
Before he lived
which
in
is
there.
Ur. Okay? If you look at your map,
And that's where we first find out that they're gonna be enslaved for 400 years.
so here we were talking about in Genesis 11, giving us the background, they're in Ur, okay? And this is where Haran dies, and then Terah takes Lot and Abram and Sarah, and they go up to Haran, up here, on their way to Canaan, which is over here. So it says in Acts that when he was still here, God spoke to Abram. What else does it say in Acts?
Abraham did the follow through.
Okay. And where did he end up? Oh, where's my paper?
Sojourn.
He appeared to him when he was still in Mesopotamia. He tells them to leave your country and go, right? And it says, and then he, where does it say that he ended up in this land that you are now, in Jerusalem? Oh, when his father died, God had him move to this country that you are now living in. So, and again, we talked about this a little bit last week. He's talking about, this is Peter talking to the high priest in Jerusalem. Okay, and he's saying when Abraham was still in Mesopotamia, God told him to come here, and now he's lived, and then he's moved to this land where you are right now. Okay, so that's how he gets from Ur to Haran to Canaan, and Peter is saying, this is what happened. Because the high priest says, is this really true? And Peter is like, yeah, this is what happened. So it just gives us a little bit more information. What about Isaiah 51, 1 and 2? What do you learn about that call and this from that?
When he was called, he obeyed and
Okay.
went.
It was just one.
Okay, and he was just one when he was called, and
God
then
made him many.
and God made him many. Okay, so you see this, the fulfilling of the promise. He's just one when he's talking to him, and he says, I will make your name great, I will make you a great nation. And Isaiah says, he was one when he was called, and God made him many. So is God fulfilling the promise?
Yes.
Yeah, he's fulfilling the promise.
Can I ask a question about the Acts section?
Yes, I might not have an answer, but somebody will.
So when it says he moved into this country where you're now living, but he gave him no inheritance there, and he had no children, he promised that he'd give it to him as a possession. What is, I don't think I understand. Like, if he's giving it to him as a possession, but he's saying he gave him no inheritance there, I feel confused by it.
You feel confused by it, yeah. When he was called, and it said in Genesis that Sarah was barren, right? So he had no children. And he's going to the land that I will show you. And we're going to look a little bit later when it says in Genesis 12, it says he will give the land to his descendants.
Okay.
Okay? So at the time when he's going there, he doesn't have, when he was called there, he didn't have an inheritance then.
He's still waiting.
So
Not
this is about the follow-through.
Yeah,
It's not to him,
Right.
it was his
Okay.
descendants.
yes. So let's look at this in chapter 12 because Scripture's always answering questions for us. So following through chapter 12, so here's the promise. Okay, and we've seen from Isaiah that he did fulfill this from one to many. From one to many. So Genesis 12, he says to leave and go, and this is what I will do. What about verses 4 through 9? What happened in 4 through 9?
He took all of his possessions and his wife and his nephew, and they set out for Canaan.
Okay. So what do you see in 4 through 9? His obedience, right?
Yeah.
So God called him to do it,
Ah, I see, yeah.
okay? And it says, and so he did.
First altar.
So he did. What's that?
Is
Yeah,
this
he
the
built an
first
altar.
altar?
Okay, and so where does he go? Where does he go?
Yeah, Shechem.
To Shechem.
Oak of Moreh.
Okay, Shechem. Follow your map so that you have a sense of where he's going. So he goes from Haran and he comes down he's in Canaan now. And he goes to Shechem, which is north, it's in the West Bank, north of Jerusalem, north of Bethlehem. So he stops there, and what does he do? He builds an altar. He builds an altar. And at that time, God appeared to him. he built an altar and said to the, in Shechem, and at that time the Canaanites were in the land, and then the Lord appeared to Abram at Shechem in Canaan and says what?
To your offspring, I will give this land.
Okay, to your offspring I will give this land.
So not to you, but to your
Okay,
offspring.
so there's the inheritance, okay? To your offspring I will give this land. So he built an altar there. And then he moves to where?
The hill country on the east of
Yeah.
Bethel.
Between
In the
Bethel
west.
and.
That's out,
Okay,
east of
Right?
it.
so
Bethel
south of
West.
Shechem, goes a little south of Shechem, okay? And what does he do there?
Built another altar.
He builds another altar, and he called upon the name of the Lord, okay? And he calls upon the name of the Lord.
And the altars.
And then he goes where?
Egypt.
Negev.
To the Negev. Okay. So let's just talk for a minute about what you see in verses 4 through 9. What do you see about Abraham? What do you see about God?
He did what the Lord asked him to do, and the Lord affirmed.
Okay. He did what the Lord asked him to, and the Lord affirmed it, right?
And he honored the Lord. He gave the Lord,
Okay.
his right place.
Yeah. And he honored the Lord how?
An
An
altar
altar.
was
Okay, building an
a
altar.
sign of his
Yeah.
submission.
And yeah, and claiming that for God and calling on the name of God. Did Abraham know everything that was happening before he left?
No.
No,
No, this was
he was a man of
it was
faith.
a journey.
It was what?
It was a journey.
Yeah,
Like he wasn't just there.
Yeah, that's a long way to go, too. Like,
it is a long way to go. It is a long way to go.
It's an interesting thing to try to explain to your family members, I'm going.
Mhm.
Yeah, right.
Where are you going?
Yeah.
I don't know.
And that's 75.
Yeah.
Like, explain that to you, Paul.
Yeah.
And your wife.
Because see,
that's
here's the thing, like where did he start out? Where did he leave? He left, this is a whole pagan
I was gonna
world,
say, yeah,
And
that's-
he had to leave the pagan world.
okay? This is a pagan world, okay? And he's being called to start a new nation.
That will be God-centered.
Okay?
So he had to leave the
He
pagan.
doesn't really know that right now, right?
to anybody else.
Right.
Doesn't really know
Probably in
that.
his best interest to not know that, because if he announced it.
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna
Mhm.
say. Yeah. Sounds straightforward. People thought he was crazy.
It's in his best interest not to know everything all at once,
Yeah, what did you say, come into Canaan, I'm coming in and I'm gonna take over this land.
okay?
But none-
But he also didn't he didn't wait to build an altar until he was at his final destination. He built it along the way,
Built altars along the way, okay?
which, I mean, just kind of feels like a lesson,
Like a what?
a lesson.
Okay? Because it goes back to that altar in Bethel from Egypt, right? Okay. But think about your own life, okay? Do you always know what God wants you to do?
Sometimes he just wants you to get moving and you'll find out.
Yeah, sometimes he wants you to just get moving.
But he always wants our obedience.
Right, he always wants the obedience. Okay? So obedience step by step, and then he shows you the next step, and then the next step. But he's never going to show you, I want you to start a new nation.
And he had to leave the pagan country because he was influenced by pagan. He may have been pagan in the beginning. He might have, he did worship idols. Then he's building this altar to the Most High God in two different places. So this renewing of his mind and transforming him by taking him out of that culture in order to build a culture of Christ, of God.
Okay, and how much do you think he knows about this Most High God at this point?
Not much.
Not much.
Not much. I don't think he knew much at that point. But he's so like faithful to something that he doesn't know much about, but I mean, just take it up and leave. And it takes us to Isaac. He knew that, I just think he knew that Isaac would not have been sacrificed because God had promised.
Okay, and we're gonna get to that.
Oh.
No, because that's chapter 22, and we're heading there. But what I want you to see is, at this point, what does he know? And at the point of Isaac, what does he know about God? So,
God is still new.
yeah,
I mean, at this point, he's only really revealed himself to Noah.
okay.
I mean,
And now Abraham is being called out of this
yeah, right.
this other land, and it's like, and Abraham just obeys. And like I said, it's a long ways. That's a long ways.
A long
Okay.
ways.
Any place along the way, can we get distracted and get discouraged and think, God, what are you doing?
And I do think that he got that call in Ur, right?
Mhm.
Well, Terah took off too, but it does say there that Terah settled.
Well, still, he died in Haran. Terah did.
I know, but
Yeah,
it does say
yeah.
he settled.
They
settled
settled there
there,
for a while.
right.
Settled for,
Instead of staying a sojourner.
Okay.
And then Abram picked it up.
Yeah, and we don't really know if, the call was, it was to Abraham, so, yeah,
They don't know where they're going.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
So, maybe they thought Haran was the place. They didn't, it's not like they had a map. It's not like they,
They didn't have this map?
no.
No, they just, they're just going,
So
but,
Noah was really
but
They
see,
didn't-
there's
They
just,
didn't even have, the
new God.
pillar of fire in the
Yeah.
daytime and the cloud to follow to know
Right.
where they were supposed to be going. He just knew he
right,
was
they're
going
not there
someplace.
yet, yeah,
Maybe in
not there
Grace,
yet. But yeah,
But, Heather, what did they know about God? I mean, they weren't known as Israelites at this time.
no, they weren't even
They
born.
weren't. Yeah,
The Israelites weren't even born.
right,
It's just Abraham, and he was just one,
Right.
and Sarah had no children.
that's true. One.
beginning of
So-
grace.
So this is the very, very beginning of the nation of Israel. So, when you think about it, it's a huge step to take. But the thing is his obedience.
Right.
His obedience. He just said, I'll show you where to go. I'll show you. I would want to know first. I'm always saying to Bill, don't start this car until we know where we're going. Because we get on the road and then he's like, well, should I turn left or right? I don't know. I don't know.
We still
gotta-
haven't established where we're going.
Right, right. So, so they just went. Okay, let's move on because we got some other fun stuff to cover here. So what happens, there's a famine in the land, so they go to Egypt. They go to Egypt. 10 through 20. What's going on there? You're laughing. Yeah.
Yeah, because he wants,
First screw up.
he wants his wife to tell a lie.
First screw up.
A first screw up.
Hashtag
Okay.
screw up.
Yeah. Well, see, remember that he doesn't. What does he know about
Nothing.
God right now?
He just-
He's just beginning on his faith walk.
Well, at first I was wondering why he left, because when he got to Shechem, that's when God told us, to your offspring I will give this land, Shechem, that area
Yeah.
there. But the important to me is to your offspring. It's not so, but it wasn't, it's still not Abraham, so I'm thinking, why did he leave? It's because it wasn't given to him yet. It's going to go to his offspring, but he didn't know when.
And who are those offspring going to be? He doesn't have any yet. But what caused him to go to Egypt?
Famine.
Yeah, the famine. They've got to eat.
What he saw.
Obviously, there wasn't food in Shechem, and he moved to Bethel, and he moved further south, and he ends up in Egypt because Egypt does have food. Okay. So, and while in Egypt, okay, then you have the little problem of what does he say to Sarah, his wife?
Just say to
You
myself.
have to tell him that she's his sister, not his
Yeah.
wife. Makes Abraham a little more down to earth like us.
Oh,
You know?
right.
So,
Right, it makes him a little more down to earth like us. He had some fears.
Thought he was going to die.
Yeah, he had some fears.
And by
Yeah. So, but what happened? What happened?
Sarah gets sick because he.
Sure enough.
Now, it's my sister, take her.
Okay, so who intervened in this?
God.
God intervened. How did he intervene?
By making
Afflicted
Pharaoh sick.
with great
Yeah,
plague.
Great plague.
Right, plagues. And Pharaoh was smart enough to figure it out, right? So why did you say that she was your sister? Why did you bring this on me? He had some fears. Okay, what was the promise? What was the promise that God had made him?
I'm gonna make you a great nation. And then he's gonna jeopardize this. He is gonna jeopardize this by not telling the truth and losing his wife
Okay.
to some man. Or I guess he was more worried about himself that he would.
Well, he was afraid he would be killed,
Right.
okay?
He doesn't get it yet.
Yeah, he doesn't get it yet.
I feel like he didn't hear the part where he's like, I'm gonna bless those who bless you, I'm gonna curse those who curse you.
Okay.
That's right.
Oh, I feel like he didn't hear that part.
But God heard what he said.
Okay.
Well, God heard what he said, and God kept to his word.
Exactly. So Abraham is afraid, but if you go back to the promise that he got from God, what should he know? Are you going to die?
No.
No.
I'm gonna bless you. I'm
How
gonna
can
curse
you die? I'm not going to let you die, right? Because I'm going to make you a great nation. I'm going to, through you, everybody's going to be blessed.
Because at this point, none of this
I mean, it
has
goes
come
back
to
to Dave's
fruition.
question as well, why did he leave? Because he thought he was gonna die because he didn't have food.
Right, right.
But, again, did he hear
But-
the promise?
But
Yeah.
also in this portion, the altar disappears. In
The,
Egypt, there's,
because he's no, yeah,
he didn't get to Egypt, build an altar to
No.
the God, to acknowledge God. So every time the altar disappears is usually when he's off course.
So again, thinking where is he in his walk with God? Okay, this is what he's been promised, so he's not going to die. So he gets himself in the situation in Egypt with Sarah, and what does God do? He
Fulfills his
intervenes and he saves him.
It's interesting too, to me, because God has yet to prove himself totally.
Mhm.
You know, as a human, especially nowadays, you have to like prove yourself a lot of times in order for me to trust you, fully trust,
Yeah.
you know. So I'm sure Abraham not knowing, you know, is he really gonna come through? I'm sure those were thoughts that he had, that he humanly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, humanly, he's in a situation where he thinks he's going to die.
Yeah,
Um,
and he hasn't seen.
He hasn't seen,
the
right,
promises
right.
fulfilled yet.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's what we want to watch as we go through this book, is how does Abraham grow in his faith with God, and how does that happen? Okay. Which we're going to see a little bit of in chapter 14. So just thinking about, he's brand new to this, and he's got this promise, but he's not really grabbing hold of that yet.
His
I think
faith is
about-
small.
I think about like us now who know all of this,
Yeah,
and still, there are many, many times that fear just dwarfs your faith.
yeah,
We do exact same
Are you
thing.
in?
yeah. Fear can dwarf your faith.
Like even knowing what we know, even though we see God at work, it's
Mhm.
still,
Yeah.
He's been revealed to us.
So we don't always walk by that strong faith because of our fears.
We can slave
Yeah.
to that.
Yep. So God brings him out of Egypt. So he intervenes and rescues him and brings him out of Egypt. And when he comes out of Egypt, where does he go? In chapter 13.
Into the Negeb,
Goes through there to where?
back to
No,
Bethel.
no.
or is Bethel,
To Bethel, okay?
back to the, between Bethel and
Okay.
Ai.
He got lost.
That's where he got lost, okay? Back to the place where he built the altar. And when he got there, what did he do?
Called upon the name of the Lord.
Okay, what do you think he was doing then? From what just happened, he's in Egypt,
Repenting, yeah.
thinks he's going to die. God intervenes and gets him out of it. and he goes back to Bethel to the altar, and what do you think is his calling upon the Lord about?
Repentance.
Repentance, yeah.
And he comes back with all the wealth,
Mhm.
so he's praising him too.
Yeah. Thank you, God.
Mm-hmm. You bailed me out.
That was a close call. Yeah.
I would hope there was repentance, but there was.
And he says,
Yeah.
it's your fault, God, for making her beautiful, it's not gonna,
Yeah.
this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. But he goes right back to that altar and calls upon the name of God. Like, phew, thank you. Okay, then the next event that happens in
Before
chapter,
that,
yeah.
while he's in Egypt, God starts another work in providing material wealth to Abraham.
Oh, right, exactly. Good point.
From
While he's
Pharaoh's
in
house.
Egypt, God starts another work of providing material wealth for him.
A blessing. Bring back
Because
the
he was
blessing.
treated well. That's what you were talking about, Jeannie. Thank
Yeah,
you.
there's no reason for him to.
Yeah,
And Pharaoh could have been like, I'll take it all back.
yes.
But he didn't.
But
Yeah,
he's,
send it with him.
no, yeah, Pharaoh's just like, get out of
Get
here.
out of here.
But see, isn't that reminiscent of Exodus?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a picture of this is what's going to happen in Exodus. When Pharaoh's just like, get out, take everything and go, just get out.
And that's where ungodly people do the more godly thing. Like this ruler, he wasn't following God, but he knew, well, he was, but you know, he responded and behaved better than Abraham in Egypt,
In Egypt,
in this scripture.
okay. So now he's out of Egypt with possessions and his life, and he's thanking God. Okay, and then because of all his possessions, what happens next in this chapter? Who's with him? Lot. So, does Lot have any possessions?
Yes,
Okay. So what happens with Lot and Abraham?
there's strife between their herdsmen.
Okay,
Capacity got too much.
too much. Kind of like us, we have too much and we fight about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Lot and Abraham both had a lot of possessions, a lot of people. The herdsmen were fighting about it. So what do?
Separate.
To separate. And how do they
Or
separate?
family member, other than Lot, these are just, like must have hired workers or something to the herdsmen to
Yeah,
be in this employed.
yeah. Because he still
Well,
doesn't
some of them
have,
got from Pharaoh.
That's inherited.
yeah.
That was
And,
part of what he got from Pharaoh.
Yeah.
Servants and men.
he accumulated people in Haran. So he had that when he came through into Canaan, but they were not his relatives except for Lot. Right?
I think he had to keep a close watch on Lot.
Okay, and we're going to look at Lot later on. We'll get to him a little bit more later on. But right now, they're separated. And what does Abraham say about this separation? How does he make that happen?
You pick.
You
Yeah.
pick. You pick. So Lot chooses what?
The best,
Yeah.
Okay, what he sees as the best.
as far as as human selection.
Yeah. So he sees the Jordan Valley is very lush and like it was in Egypt. They had good stuff there. So he chooses to go to the Jordan Valley. And it says he moved east, verse 11. So Lot chose for himself all the Jordan Valley, and Lot journeyed east. Thus they separated from each other. And where did Lot settle?
Near
Sodom.
Sodom.
Canaan,
Okay, where did Lot settle?
Canaan.
That's
Sodom.
part
Cities
of
of the
That's
valley.
it. Lot
Near-
said-
he's-
oh,
near
Abram.
Sa-
I thought
Yeah.
you meant Abram.
Abram settled in Canaan on the
And he
west,
settled in Sodom.
and Lot settled
Near Sodom.
near Sodom. And what does it say about Sodom?
The
Yeah,
men were,
foreshadowing.
the men were
Sinners
wicked.
against-
Okay,
I like that parenthetical sentence in verse 10. This was before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah.
yes,
Just
right,
a little
right.
Parenthetical
Right.
statement there.
But in 13, it says, what about Sodom?
Was wicked and sinning
Well, the
greatly.
men were
It was
wicked.
wicked, okay?
Great
The men of Sodom were wicked
The
and
women
great
made
sinners
it.
against the Lord. This is key to understand 14, chapter 14, okay? And also beyond, but for today, we're looking at 14. So you have the separation. Now, what about at the end of chapter 13, 14 through 18, after Lot separated from Abraham, then what does God say to Abraham?
Kind of reminding him of his promise.
Yeah, he's reminding him of this promise, right?
Mhm.
So is there anything new in this revelation from God that we need to understand in relationship to this promise?
He gave him coordinates there.
Okay, he said, look, north, south, east, and west. And he's in Canaan. And he says to him, this, from where you are right now, as far as you can see, I will give you.
So he was at ground zero.
Okay? And this is not involving Lot. Lot's gone.
He expands on the great nation
Okay?
to give him some idea of the numbers.
He expands on the great nation. What does he say?
If you can count the sand, you'll know how many people. Dust of the earth.
Yeah, sand or dust of the earth. If you can count it, that's how big your nation's going to be.
Wow.
At this point, he's still just him.
Just him.
And he also says he will give them the land, this land, all the land that you see, I will give to you and your offsprings. For how long?
Forever,
Forever.
verse 15.
Forever. Forever is a pretty long time. So we're seeing an expansion of the promise. And now he's just talking to Abram in the land of Canaan, and this is your land. This is your land. He tells him, go walk through it. Go walk through it. I'm going to give it all to you. I'm going to give it to you. And he moved his tent and settled at the Oaks of Mamre, which are at Hebron, which you can also see on the map. And he built an altar there. Okay. So quickly, we have to look at chapter 14. When I say chapter 14, what's the first thing you think about? Wars, okay? So you have here what? A list of kings. Kings, I was trying to picture this whole thing in my head and who was fighting who and where they were from.
I know.
And it was just a jumbled mess to me. Okay.
And a color code, the two sides.
Yeah, the two sides.
It's like
So
the Vikings.
so basically I'm going to just summarize this for you for a minute because this is the setting for what's going to happen at the end of this chapter after the wars, okay? So what you have are all these kings who were serving under this one king. Yes, and they served him for 12 years. And in the 13th year, they rebelled. So here's how war breaks out. They're rebelling. So they march through the land and they rebel and they take the land and they defeat each other. The four kings defeat the other kings, and then in the end of it, who gets taken? Lot. Okay. So in that war, Lot gets taken because he's over there living in Sodom. So all those kings are on that side, and so in that they take Lot. And now what happens?
This is really precious. When Abram heard about it, he got up and went after them.
Yes.
This is my kinsman.
Yeah, he's my kinsman.
I use this to pray for family members who are,
Great, great.
when I hear about it.
Yeah,
I get moved.
yeah. He immediately went. Okay.
Yeah.
Who did he take with him?
318.
318 men. Okay. Now he's going after
These masses. Yeah.
all these kings, right, who lost this battle and they took Lot, and he's going after like 5 or 4 kings and their warriors, and he takes those 318 men, which is very significant because he goes, and what happens?
He defeats them.
He defeats them with the 318 men. He defeats them, men who have just won this war. And so he goes and he gets Lot back, right?
Yes. He could have just said Lot got himself into this. This is the place he picked.
Right. Right,
It's on him.
right. He could have said that. Lot chose, he let Lot choose.
But they got all the possessions back.
Okay, so you got, the 318 men got everything back. And they had Lot. And at the end of that war, what happens? In,
17.
he returns, verse 17, after his return from the defeat of the king, and the kings were with him.
So he's blessed by Melchizedek.
Okay, he's met by Melchizedek. And who else?
Who else?
Verse 17, who comes out to meet him?
The king of Sodom?
The king of Sodom, okay, the king of Sodom.
He was.
So you have, after the war, the king of Sodom comes out. And the king of
Salem.
Salem.
What do we know? This is Melchizedek. What do we know about the king of Salem? What does it mean?
He was also, oh,
Yeah,
he was also.
he was also the priest, okay? So he's also the priest, the high priest, right?
And he brought out bread and wine.
And he brings out bread and wine, which is the traditional meal. What does Salem mean?
I think it means peace, but I didn't look it
Is
up.
it just
Yeah,
like
it's in Hebrew, it's
Jerusalem?
Yeah,
Hebrew.
it means peace. It means peace. And Salem is a short version of Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Jerusalem's peace, okay? So you have this king of peace coming out, and he's the high priest, and he, what else do you know about Melchizedek? Is he,
It doesn't have a family tree.
Abram tithed to him.
okay, Abraham tithed to him because he's the high priest.
He was a priest of God Most High, so there was
Right,
not something.
In Hebrews, it's referred to as the king of righteousness. as
king
well.
of righteousness.
Is that in here?
Yes.
In
In
Hebrews.
Hebrews. It
Oh,
also
in
talks in
Hebrews, yeah.
Hebrews that he's not from Levi, so he was not of the priest genealogy, that's
Right, he's not of the Levitical priesthood, okay? And so he's different, okay? He's the high priest. And what you have in the, as contrast here, what do we know about Sodom?
Wicked
Wicked.
there.
Wicked.
Wicked.
Evil.
Wicked. So you have two kings that come out to meet him after this battle. One is wicked, one is the king of peace. And what does the king of peace say to Abraham?
Blesses him. Blessed be Abraham
He blesses him by who?
by God Most
By
High.
God
Creator of
Most
heaven and
High,
earth. Deliver your enemies.
possessor of heaven and earth.
Deliver
And he
your-
blessed God Most High, who has delivered what?
your enemies. in
Your
your hands.
enemies to your hand. So what does Abraham know by what Melchizedek says to him?
It was God's
God will
blessing.
take care of those who curse you.
He did it.
It's a reinforcement of the
Yeah,
promise.
yeah.
Reminder of the promise, yeah.
Okay? So did Abraham win the battle?
No,
No. Once again, God delivered him. Right?
God delivered.
And Melchizedek is saying to him, this God, the God Most High, the possessor of heaven and earth, delivered you from your enemies. So what does Abraham now know about God?
He's a warrior.
He
Honor.
is real.
Okay? See, is he growing a little bit? Growing a little bit? Growing a little bit?
Yeah, he's faithful to his, he learns that God's
Yeah.
faithful to his
Keeps his
promise.
So much so that what does he say to the king of Sodom? What does the king of Sodom offer him?
Well,
Give me
he
the
wants
people
part of
I
his
have
land.
raised my
He
hand
wants
to the Lord
people.
God Most
Yeah.
High.
You give me the people and I'll give you all the goods.
Nope.
So what's right or wrong with that offer?
Well, they're not his people.
Well, according to this, it
Oh,
says
yeah. Okay, sorry.
that, God told him he wasn't to take any of that stuff.
Okay, what is Abraham's response to the king of Sodom?
I've raised my hand to the God Most High, I'm not going to buy into
Yeah.
this.
I raised my hand
I've made my promise.
to the God Most High. Did we see this like in courts today and stuff, like you raise your hand and you promise?
This is like on the mountain when Satan said, you know, if you do this, and worship
Yeah.
me, it'll all be yours.
Yeah. But he's like, I
Oh.
just raised my hand to the God Most High, possessor of heaven and earth. And I'm not taking anything from you. Because what I get comes from God.
Yes, so then in the future, he couldn't, then the king couldn't say, I did this.
Yeah,
And
take
the
credit
glory
for it.
would have to go to the Most High
And,
God.
okay, so somebody comes to you and presents you an offer, and you know that they're a wicked king.
Oh, my
Are
goodness.
you going to entertain that offer?
No, you
Well,
shouldn't.
Lot, and this is the difference between Lot and Abraham. This is how Lot got into this trouble,
Okay.
because he mixed his business with evil.
He was greedy.
Yeah. See, Scripture doesn't tell us that Sodom was wicked for no reason. We
Mm.
take that and we're like, okay, this is wicked, and here's the king of wicked. So, if he's making an offer to you, he's like, you're like, no, I raise my hand to God Most High. I will take from God, but I will not take from this wicked offer. No good thing can come from this. Okay. So there's, a good lesson in life. Here's the contrast. One is the God of peace. One is the God of the wicked city. But we see here in the references that you look at about Melchizedek, it talks about, it's foreshadowing here a bit about Jesus, right?
Yeah.
Because Melchizedek, and we'll get back to this again, but Melchizedek is, he's a king and a priest. And it says in Psalms, let's see what,
And in Hebrews.
Oh,
Hebrews,
in-
okay.
In Psalm 110, it said, you are a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek.
talking about Jesus.
About Jesus.
And because he's not a Levitical priest, because in the future, the whole Levitical system will be gone.
Mhm.
So Jesus is not a priest from the Levitical system. But Abraham tithed to him, gave him 10% of the spoils because he recognized that he was this righteous high priest.
And this is the first time we hear of Melchizedek.
Yeah. Yeah. But he will come back to us again later. But all of these, I love these Old Testament pictures of what's
Mhm.
coming. The whole Egypt thing, the whole Melchizedek. But what do we see about God from today's lesson? What do we see about him?
What'd you say? I didn't hear you.
What?
What did you say?
I said, what do we see about God from today's lesson?
Faithful,
He's faithful.
honest, true, has our back, will support us, means what he says,
Yeah,
He
can
doesn't
be
forget.
trusted.
yeah.
He doesn't waver.
And it's not dependent upon what you do for him to keep his
He's not
promise.
dependent upon what you do. Abraham made some
He blew it a couple
bad
times.
choices, but God was there. So that's a good thing, to know that we can always come back and God is going to be faithful to what he says he will do for us.
Well, he has to.
Yes. And as we watch Abraham grow in his faith, we take those lessons, for us. Even though sometimes, when we have really strong faith, things happen and we're just like Courtney said, fear, what did she say? Fear dwarfs
Faith.
our faith sometimes. But don't let that happen. Just go back to God, what you know about God. What you know about God. So have a good week, and we'll move on with Abraham